Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. We are so glad you're joining us today. We have a fantastic guest, and we have a little bit in common. We're both immigrants to the United States, from Germany for our guest and Ireland for me. So we're going to trade immigration stories. I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. Our guest today helps leaders build real confidence and move through change with clarity and momentum, one small step at a time. She's a TEDx speaker, a Fulbright Scholar, a professor and best-selling author featured in Business Insider, and is the host of her own podcast, which is in the top 1% in the world, Happy Healthy Hustle. And one thing that she wants to make really clear with folks is that she helps leaders do the hardest part of change, and that is actually start. So welcome, Dr. Christiane. I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but Christiane Schroeter with a T. Linguistics is not my forte. I barely can speak the English language. So, Doctor, welcome to the show. And when you say that I said that you're a professor, you got 20 plus years in at Polytech, and tens of thousands of students and clients that you have consulted with over the last several decades. Mm-hmm. And what I want to jump into is first give us the rest of the story, Germany to California. What's the story behind that journey?
Well, first of all, audience, thanks so much for tuning in today. I'm really excited to be here. And of course, I think this is really fun because we are recording this on July 2nd, 2 days before Independence Day, that both of us are going to share. You indicated the immigrant stories, and we might not go there, but still, I thought it would be a fun way to kind of kick this off, and the recording day of July 2nd. So maybe let's think a little bit about the Germany to United States connection. That is really I would say the line in my life has never been straight, right? That is really for you what you see, audience. The visibility is like, oh, she has a German accent, she's born there, now she's in California. And that's not really how it happened, right? You mentioned Fulbright Scholar. From my first stop in the United States was actually, I was in the Midwest. And that's where I earned my master's degree and my Ph.D. And then after my Ph.D., I lived in the South of the United States for a while. And from there, I went to California. So if you think about this and you have this visual image of the United States map, definitely not a straight line. And I think that is maybe even what we're going to talk a little bit today. Everything is small steps. So maybe ultimately I wanted to land at a place where there is like sunshine and abundance of warm weather, which is so different from how I grew up in Germany. But it took me a while to get there, and every single step got me closer, right? So in your life, sometimes it's not immediately clear that the next step that you lead will ultimately get you to your destination, but it's just maybe getting you one step closer.
That's so. So when I came over, I was only 16 months old. I lived in an orphanage since I was 3 days old, and then 16 months later, I got adopted. So language was never, and obviously they speak English with the accent in Ireland. Language was never an issue for me. Although years later into my adulthood, my parents teased me that they swore I was speaking Gaelic when I came over, which was, if it was gibberish Gaelic. How did you, and I don't want to use this because it usually has a negative connotation to it. How'd you assimilate into the American culture with a maybe a limited language barrier?
Beautiful question. I think that what helps is to be curious. The easiest assimilation happens when you ask questions and then you actually listen for the answer, because you ask the questions based on your curiosity and learning, but at the same time, when you really listen and you watch people as they give you the response, you also notice their body language. You notice, are they excited or not? So kind of their emotional language that goes on top of their body language. And then, of course, what they're actually saying. So the content, right? So the context in the content. And I think that helped me, that I was always an observer as a child growing up in Germany, and that I was always a good listener. And I would basically assimilate information and then kind of like a sponge at some points in my life, or even during the same day or during the same hour, I would pull that out again. So it's a little bit like a jukebox, right? You put money in and it goes to a song, and then I would remember the track that the coin took to pull out that song, and all those records were memories that I have. And I think that helps a lot if you're building your life in thinking that every person you meet is a memory, and every memory that you build is an experience that makes you grow into who you are today. That's really the growth mindset that I think helps a lot of leaders to connect better with their teams, that you need to not just ask questions, but actually show that you're curious about the response as well.
No, that's a great insight, because actually, kind of the path I wanted to in reading about you and your works and different stuff is twofold. And we'll get to the second part in the second part, which is your petite practice framework. But I want to get to that in a minute. That on the front end of things, your observations and research has shown capable leaders oftentimes hold back. And I guess my question is, if they're capable, maybe even exceptional, what is that influence that causes people to not do what they want to do or they know they should do, and they hold back?
Yeah, so I love your question with regard to the observation and the leadership. So I earned a PhD in health economics and applied economics. And I did a lot of behavioral economics in that too. So my current work, if you think about the Venn diagram, kind of sits at that complete intersection. So one circle would be execution, right? What leaders really do, what you see on the surface. And then maybe the second circle would be what I studied, behavioral science. And then the third one would be leadership. So I'm right in the middle of the intersection of those three circles: the leadership, behavioral science, and the execution. And I really figured out over the course of my career that most organizations don't even struggle with putting in a good strategy. They have the best strategy ever. And you look at it and you're like, well, like theoretically, nothing should be going wrong. Well, it's really the translation. And that's why it's so amazing that actually, English is my second language. I'm like used to translating, right? It's a translation of, all right, so what is your goal? What are your priorities? Translating those goals into the daily practices. And I named it petite practices. So you have a big goal, and now you're translating it down into the daily doable steps that you could even take on a day when things are not going well, like when you a lot of pressure, a lot of things that are leading to hiccups. That's when you need a small daily action that you can take that gets you closer to the ultimate goal. So think about your petite practice as like a little step ladder, where every day you're taking a step and you're getting closer and closer and closer. So instead of looking at like a quick elevator that just shoots you up to your priority, and then the elevator doesn't work, you're like, well, I don't know what to do right now, and you just sit there and twiddle your thumbs. You are actually taking the staircase and you're just taking one step at a time. And that's really where my specialty is, that I'm the translation of the big goal into the small doable steps and helping leaders keep up the consistency with those steps.
And I'm picturing, you use the work in the elevator. I was picturing, yeah, it's like every morning. It's those petite individual steps of get your butt out of bed, you know.
Love it.
My dog's sitting there, 95-pound German Shepherd, looking at me, going, "All right, I got to get outside, and I got to go now." Yeah, and just doing all those, having that structure, and then if it's raining or I open the door, I don't look first, which I've learned to do, because once I didn't look and I opened the door and there was a skunk, and my dog got skunked because he went after the skunk. That's what I'm picturing, is that petite practices, those small steps that lead to the ultimate goal of getting on with the workday. Now, as you were talking, and you're talking that people tend not to have issues, or organizations don't necessarily have a big problem with strategy. And my first thought was this, and I can't remember if it's a book or it's just a quote, but it goes like this: culture eats strategy every day. Mm-hmm. How does culture play? Well, first of all, if you give me your definition of culture, how does culture play in that petite practice framework to achieving ultimate goals?
Oh, this is a great question. So let's imagine you have your big goal, and I'm helping you translate the goal into the small steps. And now we have all these small steps. Now this is the crucial part. I have to take a role of the observer and let you choose your first step, because I would choose something completely different to get started with than what you would. I don't have the experiences or the insights or the feeling, the emotion that you have. And what's important is, if you choose your first step with your own cultural makeup, with the insight that really gets you out of bed, get to the dog, get to the walk, then you will actually stick to it. So the goal is, we break down petite practices and you choose the first step that you could take today, because that is so important, that you actually pick up something that you feel you can accomplish. I could tell you all day long, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. But that's really where the misalignment comes in of strategies, that you never really feel this was who you really were, or what the culture of your organization really was. So you need to figure out, all right, so if that's our big goal, how do we as a team, or as an organization, or me as an individual, actually align with reaching those goals? And that is so important, because you never really want to feel that your professional identity is completely different from your personal identity. You always want to feel you are the most aligned, authentic individual, where if you don't know something, you can tell that your team just as much as you could tell that your partner at home, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't need to fake information. And I think that's important with culture, that you understand it's an individual upbringing. It's the roots that you build. But at the end of the day, you have to learn how to use these roots to really build a strong foundation that will then lead your organization to those priorities.
So now I'm going to play the devil's advocate.
Uh-huh.
And we have no script. And our audience knows that. I usually just start off with like one prepared question, and then let's just grow a conversation organically. And so organically, and I tell people I'm like an Irish setter in the backyard, and I see a squirrel, and I take off after it. And so a squirrel, as you were talking, a squirrel darted out in front of me, and my thought was, what do you do if you are in that managerial position, that maybe just a leadership position, by because you got the title,
Mm.
and you really don't have a grasp of what it means to be a leader, and your worldview is this. And people my age, particularly, were brought up this way. If you want it done right, do it yourself. So if you have a manager or a person that's in a position of authority, supervision, responsibility, but is deficient in the reality of what leadership really is about, how do you get that person to pivot, if you will, or translate or get rid of that mindset of individuality because that's how they were brought up?
That's a great question. Yeah, and it actually comes down to the fact that sometimes it helps to kind of sit down and pause and nearly look at your life as like a ticking clock, where every time when you spend that hour doing things yourself, you could be doing something different. And I'm going to play the devil's advocate now too. What if you spent that hour doing something that somebody else on your team could have done, and you could have delegated it, maybe written out like a really good protocol of, all right, these are the standard operating procedures. This is how I
Mhm.
expect things to be done. And now I'm going to dedicate my time to this task. Imagine at the end of your life, you look back, and I nearly guarantee you wish you would have done that you would have written out the standard operating procedures, delegated it, etc. You never wish, oh, I just wish all my life I would have done everything on my own. No, 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 you're not. You're going to wish I would have spent more time with my family, with my friends, with my loved ones, and I wished I would have delegated more. So, what helps sometimes is just to be brutally honest. And I actually have a friend that on his cell phone, he has a countdown calendar where he basically counts down the time of the average life expectancy of a male living in the United States. And he counts down the days until it gets to that particular age. And it helps visualize him. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of time left. I better get I better get out of bed. I better get my day started. I better delegate, because you know what? I want to twiddle like figuring things out over here that 10 other people could do on my team. And you know what? You have to be okay with the fact that they're not going to do it the way that you did it.
Hmm.
That's okay. It still freed up the time for you to do something else, because time is precious and we all only have 24 hours. So it helps to be brutally honest. And that could be a team leader speaking up, or it could just be, as I say, for yourself to like pause and say, hold on, what am I doing here? Why am I actually doing this right now? I am, in essence, wasting my time away, right?
Yeah. No. And I'm looking down because I'm writing notes.
Put that timer on your phone. Yes, it's a good exercise.
Well, I when I train across the country, particularly with military and civilian law enforcement, is in a 3-day leadership course. I end it with the last thing they have to do is to take out a piece of paper and write down what are people in one sentence. Write down the one sentence or sentences that people would say about you tomorrow if your funeral was tomorrow. What are they going to say about you? Because that's summarizing how you've impacted their life. Then write down this sentence. What do you want them to say? And then write down in a bullet point, what are you not doing to live the sentence you just wrote? And that, for me, when I did that, when that challenge was put to me, it was very sobering, but then it did require that honest self-reflection of, you know what, there may not be anybody at my funeral because a lot of them probably would say, hey, he's a real north end of a southbound horse at work. And this is several decades ago. Or he was a He was an A-type personality and always had to be right and do everything himself. And so they're probably not going to be at my funeral if that's what they think. But having that challenge of what are they going to say was a wake-up call for me to then really reflect, what do I want them to say? And then I tell them the next, all this is on one piece of paper, and I'll wrap it up here in a second. I tell them, write down 3 goals you're going to achieve in the next 6 months. Not try to do, not think about doing, but you're actually going to achieve. What are those 3 things, and then what are you going to do to celebrate achieving that, even if nobody else knows? I want to lose 15 pounds. Write it down. And then what are you going to do to celebrate that? Because that psychologically, physiologically, that affirmation is good, especially if it's coming from you. That whole self-talk thing that we always talk about the negative, but we never talk about teaching people to talk to themselves about the positive. And then I tell them, put it in an envelope, write the address you want it mailed to in 6 months, seal it. I'm going to turn it in. I'm going to pay the postage. And in 6 months, you're going to get a letter from yourself to yourself. And then it's up to you to look at it and go, yeah, man, I really didn't do what I said I was going to do. Again, that accountability. And I've found that to be effective. But I want to take it into a different arena. Modern day recruiting and hiring and performance evaluations. We're still, it seems, in my experience, we're still doing things the same way we were 20 years ago. And we have such multi-generational employees now, more so than we've had in the past, I think. What are your insights on how can organizations do a different and better way of recruiting, onboarding, and evaluating employees so you don't, like I just read today, the hospitality industry has a 78.4% turnover rate. The finance industry is, depending on which part of finance you're looking at, it's 25 to 35% and up to 64%. So you're in this constant cycle of hiring people. Why aren't you doing things differently to break that cycle is my thought. So from your petite practice framework, which I think that's trademarked, right? I mean, yeah. So what is the uniqueness of your petite practice framework that could impact an organization that has either like nobody applying for jobs at their organization, or they have an extensive turnover rate?
Oh, that's a great question. So nobody applying could just be that, quite honestly, you're expecting too much and the reward for the work is just not communicated very well. It could also just not be clear that people look at it and they are not entirely certain that they qualify, and there's no way for them to maybe ask follow-up questions. So your call out, your job posting should always be clear. It should communicate a clear alignment between your expectations, the qualifications, and of course, the salary along with that too. And we just went through a job search, and I was actually the chair of that particular job search right here at the university. So this comes all from fresh experience. Now, I have to tell you, with Petite Practice, this is the best example how we did that job search at the university and how challenging it is. And I didn't come up with it. This is what the university puts on us, right? As like how to do it. This is not like me as like a leader creating this with Petite Practices. So this is anti-Petite Practice. We basically have to do at least one Zoom interview with, the somewhat shortened list, which we had close to 100 applicants. Then the next thing will be we have to call all the references of the people that are on the short list and confirm that there are references, that they have something positive to say. Then we invite people to campus. And once they are on campus, this is absolutely not petite practice. There's usually about 2 days that these candidates spend with us, from breakfast to lunch, to meeting students, to meeting different leaders at the university, presenting a research seminar, presenting a teaching seminar, going out for dinners, meeting various faculty members, meeting various staff members, and the list goes on and on and on. And you're always on, right? So there isn't really like a small little thing that they're doing. This is a big, major thing. And everybody watches and observes and has their own little cultural experience that goes along with that. So this is a challenge. And what I've noticed, it just because I've been working here for 20 years, that the expectations that we have to those applicants have only increased even more, because we feel that these people come in and they can teach and research at the level that a lot of more experienced faculty can. And sometimes it's really difficult to say, we have to give them grace. They're coming out of graduate school. And this is a difficult thing. They're coming into an institution where they have to know it all. And sometimes there was just not the training right there. So the best way to really onboard them and keep them here is to immediately assign a mentor and really think, all right, what is it that I struggled with when I started? And what are some of those little roadblocks that we could eliminate by providing, I don't know, maybe like nearly like a folder where they can access various information in there. All right, you have questions about housing, go here. Questions about health insurance, go here. Questions about, how your day-to-day life at the university looks like, go here. So it's nearly, they have information ready. They don't always need to ask. Sometimes you don't even need to ask. Sometimes you don't even know what to ask. You're just so overwhelmed. And at the same time, there's also a mentor that checks in every so often and guides them through. Now, the advantage of that is that you, especially when you start, you're most likely the most junior faculty on staff, that you feel you're imposing on everybody else's time by having them explain you things, by being the slowest one because you're learning things, or maybe even by, just kind of like figuring things out yourself. And so you're feeling you're watched, but you're also somewhat uncertain, is this even a place to be? So you really need to think a little bit of like, we are not just hiring somebody to do a job, we're hiring somebody to be part of a team. And that person needs to feel in the team culture that they don't really know just based on that 2 day of experience that they had. So you need to make sure you're coming back with information, but you might just come back too and just say, all right, you might not even have any questions from me, but maybe just, me coming to your class and watching how you teach or how you lead a meeting, just being there as a quiet observer is already an amazing help. And I sometimes wish that more people would do that, where they would just make themselves available and watch what I do while I do it, and then provide me feedback afterwards. Because it's not always that I necessarily have a question, but when they watch it, then I might have a question afterwards because I was in the moment of doing what I was doing. So I hope that helps. So basically, I think retention doesn't just stop at the signing of the contract. It has to continue growing in making sure that people feel they can grow with the culture of the organization and not just, checking boxes and doing day-to-day tasks.
Yeah, and at the university level, I'm an adjunct for a major university, an institute within a major university. So, but I'm a contract adjunct, let's put it that way. But that whole publish or perish, and here I think one of the most difficult things for people in positional leadership, I think people that have no formal position, but they are the de facto leader within a work group have it much easier than those who are actually have a title and have benchmarks and different things that they have to meet. But the message delivered, particularly on new hires, and if there's that probationary period, or in your world, that if you're working towards your ultimate goal is to get tenured, is there is a very fine line in their mind between, oh, you're just trying to be helpful and watching me, or you're judging me and you can end my career. And that fine line, and whether it's in the academic arena or others, like most organizations have a probationary period, and you're always going to kind of try to be on your best because you want to make probation, and there may be some sucking up to bosses, and that's not the genuine you kind of deal. So how can we, or what would it look like to create a environment and a process that's performance related? Because that's what I teach is administrative and federal employment law. What would it look like in your framework to minimize that judgment versus, hey, I'm really here to help?
Oh, beautiful. I love that. Yeah. So maybe let's take the big goal. You're going to observe somebody that was hired over the course of 12 months, right? That's a big goal.
Mm-hmm.
12 months is a long time period. So now petite practice means I'm taking that priority of creating an annual performance evaluation into small steps. And that means you need to take that annual performance evaluation, and maybe there's even a deadline, and start reverse engineering from the deadline to today and say, all right, so here we are. We have our teaching schedule. We have maybe research publications. There's maybe service work that has to be done. There is student interactions. There's staff interactions. So there's all these little pots, these tasks that I can break down, and I can make them really small too. And then what you need to do is I would seriously write it out. It could be a Google Doc into little tasks. So we have 20 tasks that plug into this annual performance evaluation that you want to touch on, right? And then I would share it with the team. And I would say, look, we have to evaluate colleague X, Y, and Z over here. And everybody else that has gone through performance evaluation and is on the committee, hopefully there is a committee in evaluating this colleague, take one of these tasks and put your name there, put the date when you're actually going to do it, and then share it with the team and let us know. And then after you have done it, share your observations with us. So it's truly not just like oh my gosh, I have to write this thing, and you wait until the 3-day before mark, and then you throw this letter together that's half-baked, and you never saw the person in the classroom, you never met with them, you don't even know what students say, it's just based on hearsay and who knows what. You actually use your team, distribute the tasks, petite practices, small steps, but you also give the new hire the opportunity to perform on different days, because you don't want to just show up once in the classroom, and that might not be the best day, and put so much pressure on that new hire that they feel, oh my gosh, I think I totally messed it up. The students weren't working, they were tired, some of them came in late, and all this doesn't look good on me. And now I'm feeling I'm getting a bad performance evaluation because that one day just didn't work out. It's okay. Give them multiple ways. You can always say all right, I'm giving you the whole pass right here. So I came in that one day and this is what I observed. you want to maybe change some of these things? And I come in a couple of months and see how that all worked out. And you could even write that in your performance evaluation and say, based on the early feedback, this particular person then changed some of the policies in the classroom. And 2 months later, an additional observation showed that the policies actually changed student behavior, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a great evaluation because it shows that you're transforming. But at the same time, I really want to emphasize, to me, the worst evaluations I've gotten in my life were the ones where somebody just took all the written material I turned in that I basically showed in as like proof, like my articles, my student evaluations, my my travel where I present to conferences, my workshops that I taught, the books that I published, and then wrote about that, and then gave me the letter. And now you're wondering, it's like, that seems pretty thorough. Yeah, but the human piece is missing, right? The
Yeah.
human piece means that the meeting with me ahead of time, I'm going to write this. What do you really think I should emphasize? Is there something I can do to write the very best performance evaluation possible that you want to tell me right now? That was missing. And I think that's so important.
It is, and I think part of today's work environment is such that we're the classic do more with less. So depending on what your ratio of supervisor to employee responsibility is, you're like, man, I got 25 people working underneath me, and I'm going to take the path of least resistance. And that performance evaluation is, hey, you're meeting all our expectations. And Chris Voss, he was a hostage negotiator, retired from the FBI. He calls it splitting the difference. And that's the easy. It's the most efficient and least effective way of doing a performance evaluation, particularly if you're still using the numerical on a scale of 1 to 10. And yeah, you start giving people sevens and eights, because if you give them a 9 or a 10, you have to write out and articulate, justify, or if you're giving them a 1 or a 2 or a 3, you got to write an explanation. But if you're in that 4 to 7, you just put a number in. And I know companies and law enforcement agencies are still doing that because it's like you said, you're checking a box off. But we're not improving productivity in the manufacturing arena by doing that. We're not in improving police community relationships or whatnot, because what's that definition of insanity? We're doing the same thing the same way over and over and expecting a different result. So that and give me some of your insights because so many people, particularly in the private sector, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about those numbers. It's all about how many widgets we're making, or whatever it is. It has to be. You have to be able to calculate it and put it into a financial framework. When in reality, and this is my observation, my opinion, the reality of human existence is we all want safety, security, prosperity, and control in our lives. And that includes at work and at home. And that we ignore that. Those are the motivator. It's not the pay. The paycheck, is going to have some motivation as to, am I making enough to live at a level or whatever that I want to. But people will take a pay cut to go to a different organization that has a better culture, a better appreciation for their employees. So how do you see or not see those four factors being taken into consideration in the workplace? And how would you, in your petite practice, what are some specific steps people could actually implement, like starting today, when it comes to your workers' safety, security, prosperity, and control? How could they start implementing things that will make that employee seen and heard and appreciated? That's
Oh,
a
this is
long
so
question. That's a long question.
it's a great question because I think that we frequently do feel that there is the performance evaluation that checks the boxes, and you don't maybe even dare to ask a follow-up question about it because you're like, well, I don't know, like maybe there's like, I mean, first of all, I don't want to feel like they're retaliating and thinking like I'm arguing about it. And at the same time, though, I feel not seen because some of the things I accomplished are just simply not in there. And I don't even understand the score of the 7 because I feel I was more like a 9, right? So that's like one thing. And it definitely doesn't really align with your word of safety because you don't feel safe in speaking up. And
Mhm.
that is really unfortunate because over time, the safety can lead a little bit to like, a lack of satisfaction. But then you may be starting to look for other jobs where you start to feel they would see more of who I really am. And you start to get frustrated and your work performance slows down. And it's like basically like the beginning of the end. So
Yeah.
if you really think about that, that's sometimes how it looks like the misaligned performance evaluation.
And that
Now,
that gets triggered a lot. Those misaligned performance evaluations, and I'm speaking from experience, trigger a lot of,
mm,
not baseless, but it's the knee jerk reaction. A lot of
mhm,
times, it triggers an EEOC complaint into HR, or to a state or federal agency because the person is so angry,
yeah,
and that they weren't shown any consideration or respect or communication. So, on their part is, well, I'm going to show you, and they're going to retaliate,
yeah.
and then that poisons the work culture even further. So I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I immediately thought of a couple of incidents in my career where those performance evaluations rapidly disintegrated into an EEOC complaint, which were eventually unfounded, but it was a lack of communication that started it all.
Beautiful. And that's the great transition into what I'm going to say now with regard to my PT practice. It really comes down to communication and it comes down to culture and it comes down to choice. And I know these all start with C's now, the communication, the culture, the choice. But think about this. You let somebody know you're going to do this performance evaluation, and most likely they're aware of the deadline because they might have to prepare certain material and submit it by the deadline. And then you get that material and you're in charge of writing it and you communicate to your employer, I have to write your performance evaluation. So now the way that I do it, I get students all the time that say, can you write me a letter of recommendation because I'm applying for a job or internship or scholarship or something. And I could just say, yeah, sure, just send me your resume and I call it good. And I have like a template on my computer and I just switch out the name and the grade and everything else is done. But I don't do that. In fact, what I do is I say to the student, cool. So I need 3 things from you. Yes, I need your resume. Yes, I need the job announcement. But thirdly, you need to write that first letter of recommendation. You're going to write your own performance evaluation. And it's nearly like the question when you're in a coffee shop and you're checking out and the person gives you the drink and then they turn around that little screen where you have to pay and it suggests a tip and it's like 20, 25%. It's always like, whoa, oh, I just got a coffee. Right. But then you're looking at it and you're like, do you think you deserve a tip?
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, do you think you deserve a tip? Like, I mean, like, what do you think I should do here? Right. And they're like, well, I can't really force you. Right. But then I sometimes ask them, do you feel like the level of service you just provided deserves a tip? And that is such an important question because it makes you, as the expecting performance evaluation, all of a sudden realize it's like, hold on, I'm expecting a glowing review. Did I actually make myself visible? Did I deliver up to what
Hmm.
they are really looking for? Like sometimes it really helps to grab your job posting and read through it. Like, what was I actually supposed to do this year? To
Yeah.
actually do all these things. Whoopsie, right? And so in the coffee shop, you're like, what do you think you deserve in terms of a tip? And they're like, well, I don't know. Like, you don't have to give me any tip. It's like, so you think like you did your work so poorly that you don't think you deserve a tip. And you could argue with them forever, but it's sometimes good to challenge people. It's like, all right, so you're not happy with your letter. What do you think you did during that year? Or maybe you just didn't communicate it, right? But we don't need to even get to that point. Let them write the first draft of the performance
Mm.
evaluation, and then you look at it. And they will feel safe because they feel that whatever you didn't see, I'm giving you now that letter, and they don't know what I'm actually going to do with it. They just send it to me with their resume and with a job announcement, and then I'm reading the letter. And I can tell you one thing for sure at that level that are immediately eliminated is that they know how much work that was to write the letter.
Yeah.
And like, oh, it's a lot of work. It's like, well, I mean, like, yes, it's a lot of work to write a performance evaluation that you actually feel matches who you are. So welcome to my world.
Yeah. How,
And it really, it's like diffusing the whole like going back and forth thing because most of the time, like, I'm just gonna let you do your thing.
oh, that's, I've never done that in a restaurant. I, when I'm doing a tip, or my wife will go, she will say, you better leave a good tip. She or he, our server, just did an excellent job.
Uh-huh.
And for my wife, a really good tip means 40%. So, and, but these, I get a little sideways when they put on, you get your bill, and that's the first thing I look for. If a gratuity, 18% gratuity has already been added, regardless of performance or whether the food, was, you know, good or not or anything. It's like, well, 18%. I guess you think that's what you're worth. If that's, I'd be going, 25. If I was a guy, I'd tell my employees, we're going to be given 25, 30% tip service and food and this, that, and the other thing. And I wouldn't bat an eyelash at that. But if it's already on there at 18% and our server sucked, it's like, sorry, and I'll round it up to 20. I'll give you 2% on top of that. But yeah, that's like, nah. But I've never thought about actually asking, hey, what do you think? Do you deserve a tip, or what do what kind of tip? But that begs this question: is how quickly we are
Mhm.
in a position of authority, leadership. Whether it's being the boss or being the manager or however you want to look at it, whatever title, is when we do performance evaluations, we lean into being critical.
Mhm. Yeah.
And because we think criticism will improve performance. And because that's the way we were raised. That's how we were treated, growing up and all that kind of stuff. Is how can we get people that are in those positions of evaluation to do the same thing about themselves?
Beautiful. Yeah. So I have two responses to that. So my first response is what I frequently see that leaders do when with the performance evaluation is well, I can't make it too positive because then I don't know what to write next year because this one is already so positive and I want to give them room to improve.
Yeah. Yep.
Like,
Been
really?
there, done that.
Like a reverse positive praise. It's like,
Yeah.
don't be too positive because then you're not going to try hard enough. It's like, okay, weird, but weird. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I frequently hear is like, well, but basically, I can't help them too much because I struggled myself too. And so they need to struggle a little bit just because I struggled too. I remember back then when I started, it was really much harder. And so now I think they're the easy road. So they need to struggle a little bit. And we need to make sure that they're going to improve and they need to struggle. And we can't help them too much. We can give them some pointers, but they can also come to us and ask us
Yeah.
questions, can't they? Right?
Yeah. No, what is it? No pain, no gain. And so I'm going to deliver some pain so you can gain. Yeah, that begs another issue. And it's a great book. I love reading it and rereading it. Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Okay.
And that so often I personally have to go, Pat, get your head out of your butt and park the ego at the door. It's not about you. It's about your client. It's about your community. Get off your high horse. And I struggle with that a lot because I'm competitive minded. I'm 100% Irish, so man, I think it's genetic. We saved the world. If you don't believe it, there's a book called How the Irish Saved the World. That we have big egos, and to park those at the door is difficult for a lot of people. So, how do you, in a kind way, work with people on minimizing their ego when it's a detriment to the organization or maybe even to themselves without coming across as being judgmental and critical? I think that's the hardest thing for people, is to be put into a position of evaluating someone's performance or past conduct. In the legal world, one of the hardest things for a jury to do is to find somebody guilty. Because they're, particularly if it's like a life sentence or something like that, is exhausting to do. So how do we develop a work environment or even a personal in your own family life environment that removes the negative judgmental but implements the empathy and the compassion, but still accomplishing the mission and the goals?
Yeah, so let's come back to the big goal and the small steps. And I put together the small steps in terms of distributing, observations with maybe meetings, with maybe, having feedback loops in there, etc. So there's a lot of elements going on. So what you need to be clear as a leader is you need to be fully transparent in the evaluation process. And the evaluation process really needs to be like a recipe, to where you're putting the ingredients together and then instructions together that somebody else, were they be in your position, would have written a very similar leadership performance evaluation. So it cannot be coming from a point of like, oh, I'm emotionally driven, so I'm writing this evaluation right now. It needs to really come from a completely objective perspective. And what's so important is that you meet with your employee frequently and say, what are you currently working on? What are the 3 things that you're currently struggling with? What are the 3 things you're currently succeeding with? And so you have all these data points instead of just having this one annual package of their submission, you have all these meetings, these data points where you can course correct. Because think about it this way. If that server in the restaurant didn't do a good job, you probably don't want to go back to the restaurant,
Right.
and that will hurt your sales. If you have an employee that doesn't do a good job, you're not going to have people coming into your company and spending their money there. So at the end of the day, you're just hurting yourself by not being a leader that really raises employees that basically fulfill your standards. You're basically just hurting yourself because you're making your standards so out of reach and so muddy that they can't even see exactly where they need to be going. So just like wandering around without GPS, and you need to be giving them the GPS and say, all right, so how about this month? This is a really tough month because we have some goals to meet, and I'm communicating right now what those goals would be. And I would like that you share with me how you see you plug into the goals and how we can be an effective team in reaching those goals right here. So you need to be honest. And I love when leaders are really vulnerable and they say, you know what, when I started, I wasn't very good in that either. So this is really what helped me, right? So I mean, like sometimes it's just so easy to think, well, I'm here and they're there, right? And then you're judged from the point of, oh, like they are not where I am. Well, of course not, because they're like, whatever, 25 years behind you. I mean, you can't compare your day, whatever, 1,600 in the company with somebody that's just on their 16th day. So you need to give them the chance to understand how you got from the beginning to the end. And you need to really hear their struggles, their successes, but also you need to understand where the strengths are, right?
Yeah.
The three S's, the struggles, the successes, and the strength, because only then you can make them into the employee that will really help your company thrive.
And in what you just said, I heard, I was in Washington, D.C. at a presidential, it's President's Council on Human Trafficking. And a survivor of human trafficking was making a presentation to the rest of us. And this is what she said, and it ties into exactly the mindset that you're talking about. And now she's a survivor of human trafficking, and I think she was in her mid 20s at this time. This was about 5 years ago. And she goes, you've been taught never judge a book by its cover. Mm-hmm. I'm here to ask you, don't judge me by what chapter of the book you walked in on. Oh. And I think that's one of the things in that performance evaluation is that we need to have that it's not just the one sentence in a paragraph or one chapter in a 50 chapter book that you read that you're going to go, and throw it away because of one bad chapter or you're an English teacher and you go, that was grammatically incorrect. This piece of work sucks, and you throw it out because of one minor mistake. So that's what kind of came to mind is don't judge an employee's performance by the one chapter or one day in a 12-month period. I accidentally shot a chair in my office once. And it was the dumbest thing. It was stupid, but this is the lesson I learned about performance and judging people. When I came back into work, I had to call my boss. An internal affairs detective came out, and I'm going to get a written reprimand, which I truly deserve. But all I kept thinking was how stupid that was, and I had 60 cops working for me, and they're going to think our boss is a total idiot, and I'm going to lose, all influence, impact, respect, everything, because I made a stupid mistake. I came back to work the next day, and I had two doors that went into my office, both of which were locked. And I came through the door that led to where the officers' roll call area was, and locker rooms and sergeants' offices. And when I get to my door, there's this, it's typed, message on the door that says, if Lieutenant Welsh invites you to have a seat, politely decline and remain standing. And I thought, oh, that was kind of funny, because I shot a chair. You don't want to be sitting in a chair in his office. I opened the door, and I had 12 chairs in my office, conference table. Every chair had a bullseye target taped to it. And then on my desk was a little clear plastic, like a recipe box that your grandmother would have had or something. And it was filled with ashes from somebody's fireplace, and a little type note that said, here lie the remains of the chair shot by Lieutenant Welsh. And they put the date. And then next to that was a dart gun with two plastic darts with a little type note that says, this might be safer for you to take on vacation with your kids. And I just started laughing. But then I also thought, who has a key to my office? But the lesson I learned from the people that worked under me, my sergeants and my rank and file officers, was they had a sense of humor about something stupid, and that they weren't holding it against me. They were going to have a little fun with me about it, but the message was, boss, don't worry about it. It's a one-time incident, and tried to take the sting, because they knew I'm going to get a written reprimand, and that's going to be on my books for 2 years. So kind of taking the sting out of a stupid mistake. But when it gets so myopic about the bottom line, profits and loss, all those kinds of things, and then we get judgmental, that's what ruins the culture of an organization, and people don't want to work there. So all those thoughts went racing through my mind as you were sharing so I'm picturing what you're sharing is like, oh yeah, man, I can relate to that. And I hope our audience is probably doing the same thing and relating. How can people reach out to you? How can, books that you have published, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, an easy way would be take my Petite Practice Power Quiz, which is completely free, to see what is a small step that you could start taking that will really help you tap into your own personal leadership power. And that quiz lives on my website, Dr. Christiane, and just /quiz. So you will take the questions. It's actually quite fun. And then you will get the results delivered by email, and it might actually make you laugh, and it might make you realize that there is a little step you can do to align even better. And then, of course, check out my YouTube channel where my podcast also lives, and you can see my TEDx talk, and then join my book launch team. So I have a book coming out August 16th that is called Petite Practice. And I would love for you to be there when the ball drops, because we're going to do a countdown until the ball and the book drops on Amazon. It's going to be really fun. And I would love for you to join into the party. Plus, you get all different kind of perks. So go to my books website. It's Dr. Christiane /books, and sign up right there. And I would love to have you.
Awesome, man. This has been fun. I knew we were going to have a exciting and an impactful conversation, because I took 2 pages of notes, and I want to thank you for your time, because I know you're a busy person. For our audience, if this message resonated with you, reach out to Dr. Schroeter. I always got I got
very good.
Yeah. My wife took German in high school, and sometimes she'll mess with me, and she'll just start talking German. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying.
Good.
And so I hate to mispronounce people's names. So share this message with someone that you know needs to hear it. And don't be afraid. Like I said in the opening, is one of the biggest steps you will take is that first step in that petite process. Instead of, you can't gobble down a whole quarter pounder in one bite. You got to work at it. Reach out and ask for help. Look for a mentor. Look for a coach. Look for opportunities where you can expand and learn, and be that warrior servant leader that you are aspiring to be. We want to thank you because of your loyalty. We're now in 75 countries, plus Hong Kong, and we're growing every day in our downloads and followers, and it's because of your commitment, your loyalty, and your sharing our message. So thank you very much. Until next week, love y'all, and remember, always, always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons, because that's what warriors, servants, and leaders do every day, every time. Love you all. See you next week.